Hey everyone, welcome back to the Shivering Mouse. I'm so excited to have you back here today to continue our story. It is chapter 15 of C.S. Lewis's The Horse and His Boy, and this is the last part of this book, so we finally get to see how it ends. I know it's been quite a journey as we go through it chapter by chapter. We started out going 3 chapters at a time, but until I get a laptop up and running again, it's going to have to be 1 chapter at a time. So that's just kind of stretched out the adventure, which is fine by me because this is absolutely one of my favorites in the Narnia series. So let's continue on and find out how it concludes. Rabadash the Ridiculous, because he wasn't ridiculous enough already to this point. The next turn of the road brought them out from among the trees, and there, across green lawns, sheltered from the north wind by the high wooded ridge at its back, they saw the castle of Anvard. It was very old, and built of a warm reddish-brown stone. Before they had reached the gate, King Lune came out to meet them, not looking at all like Aravis's idea of a king, and wearing the oldest of old clothes, for he had just come from making a round of the kennels with his huntsman, and had stopped for a moment to wash his doggy hands. But the bow with which he greeted Aravis, and as he took her hand, would have been stately enough for an emperor. "Little lady," he said, "we bid you heartily welcome. If my dear wife were still alive to make you better cheer, but could not do it... if my good wife were still alive, we would make you better cheer, but could not do it with better will. And I'm sorry that you have had the misfortune to be driven from your father's house, which cannot be but a grief to you. My son, Cor, has told me about your adventures together, and about all of your valor." "It was he who did all that, sir," said Aravis. "Why, he rushed at a lion to save me." "Eh? What's that?" said King Lune, his face brightening. "I haven't heard that part of the story." Then Aravis told it, and Cor, who had very much wanted the story to be known, though he felt like he couldn't tell it himself, didn't enjoy it nearly as much as he had expected. And, indeed, he felt rather foolish, but his father enjoyed it very much indeed, and in the course of the next few weeks told it to so many people that Cor wished it had never happened. Then the king turned to Win and Bree, and was just as polite to them as he was to Aravis, and asked them a lot of questions about their families, and where they had lived in Narnia before they had been captured. The horses were rather tongue-tied, for they weren't yet used to being talked to as equals by humans, or grown-up humans, that is. They didn't mind Aravis and Cor. Presently Queen Lucy came out from the castle and joined them, and King Lune said to Aravis, "My dear, here is a loving friend of our house, and she has been seeing that your apartments are put to rights for you far better than I could have done it." "You'd like to come and see them, wouldn't you?" said Lucy, kissing Aravis. They liked each other at once, and soon went away together to talk about Aravis's bedroom, Aravis's boudoir, and getting clothes for her, and all the sorts of things that girls do talk about on such an occasion. After lunch, which they had on the terrace, it was cold birds and game pie and wine and bread and cheese. King Lune ruffled up his brow and heaved a sigh. "Hi-ho, we still have to worry about that creature Rabadash on our hands, my friends, and must needs to resolve what to do with him." Lucy was sitting on the king's right and Aravis on the left. King Edmund sat at one end of the table, and Lord Darren faced him on the other. Dare and Peridin and Cor and Corrin were on the same side as the king. "Your Majesty would have had perfect right to strike off his head," said Peridin. "Such an assault as he made puts him on level with assassins." "It is very true," said Edmund, "but even a traitor may mend. I have known one that did." And he looked very thoughtful. "To kill this Rabadash would go near raising a war with the Tisroc," said Darren. "A fig for the Tisroc," said King Lune. "His strength is in numbers, and numbers will never cross the desert. But I have no stomach for killing men, even traitors in cold blood. To have cut his throat in battle would have eased my heart mightily, but this is a different thing." "By my counsel," said Lucy, "your Majesty shall give him another trial. Let him go free on the straight promise of fair dealing in the future. It may be that he will keep his words." "Maybe apes will grow honest, sister," said Edmund, "but by the lion, if he breaks it again, may it be in such a time and place that any of us could swap his head in a clean battle." "It shall be tried," said the king, and then, to one of the attendants, "Send for the prisoner, friend." Rabadash was brought before them in chains. To look at him, anyone would have supposed that he'd passed the night in a noisome dungeon without food or water, but in reality he had been shut up in quite a nice and comfortable room, and provided with an excellent supper. But as he was sulking far too furiously to touch the supper, and had spent the whole night stamping and roaring and cursing, he naturally did not now look his best. Ooh, I'm gonna be throwing stuff on the floor again, guys, watch out. "Your Royal Highness needs not be told," said King Loon, "that by the law of the nations, as well as by all reasons of prudent policy, we have as good a right to your head as ever one mortal man had against another. Nevertheless, in consideration of your youth and the ill nurture devoid of any gentleness and courtesy which you have doubtless had in the land of slaves and tyrants, we are disposed to set you free, unharmed, on these conditions. First, that—" "Curse you for a barbarian dog," sputtered Rabadash. "Do you think I will even hear of your conditions? Phaw! You talk very largely of nurture and I know not what. It's easy for a man in chains. Take off these vile bonds and give me a sword, and let any of you who dares then debate with me." Nearly all the lords sprang to their feet, and Corrin shouted, "Father, can I box him, please?" "Peace, your majesties, my lords," said King Loon. Have we no more gravity among us than to be so chafed by the taunt of a peacock? Sit down, Corrin, or you shall leave the table. I ask your highness again to hear our conditions." "I hear no conditions from barbarians and sorcerers," said Rabadash. "Not one of you dare touch a hair on my head. Every insult you have heaped upon me shall be paid in oceans of Narnian and Archenlandish blood. Terrible shall be the vengeance of the Tisroc. Even now, but kill me, and the burnings and torturings of these northern lands shall become a tale to frighten the world for thousands of years hence. Beware, beware! The bolt of Tash falls from above." "Does it ever get caught on a hook on the way down?" asked Corrin. "Shame, Corrin," said the king. "Never taunt a man save when he is stronger than you. Then, as you please." "Oh, you foolish Rabadash," sighed Lucy. Next moment, Cor wondered why everyone at the table had risen and was standing perfectly still. Of course he did the same himself, and then he saw the reason. Aslan was among them, though no one had seen him coming. Rabadash started as the immense shape of the lion paced softly in between him and his accusers. "Rabadash," said Aslan, "take heed. Your doom is very near, but you may still avoid it. Forget your pride. What have you to be proud of? And your anger. Who has done you wrong? And accept the mercy of these good kings." Then Rabadash rolled his eyes and spread out his mouth into a horrible, long, mirthless grin like a shark, and wagged his ears up and down. Anyone can learn how to do this if they take the trouble. He had always found this very effective in Calormen. The bravest had trembled when he had made these faces. Ordinary people had fallen to the floor, and sensitive people had often fainted. But what Rabadash hadn't realized is that it's very easy to frighten people who know that you can have them boiled alive the moment they give the word. The grimaces didn't look at all alarming in Archenland. Indeed, Lucy only thought Rabadash was going to be sick. "Demon! Demon!" shrieked the prince. "I know you! You are the foul fiend of Narnia! You are the enemy of the gods! Learn who I am, horrible phantasm! I am descended from Tash, the inexorable, the irresistible! The curse of Tash is upon you! Lightning in the shape of scorpions shall be rained on you! The mountains of Narnia shall be ground into dust! "Have care, Rabadash," said Aslan quietly. "The doom is nearer now. It is at the door. It has lifted the latch." "Let the skies fall!" shrieked Rabadash. "Let the earth gape! Let blood and fire obliterate the world! But be sure I will never desist till I have dragged to my palace by her hair the barbarian queen, the daughter of dogs, the—" "The hour has struck," said Aslan, and Rabadash saw, to his supreme horror, that everyone had begun to laugh. They couldn't help it. Rabadash had been wagging his ears all the time, and as soon as Aslan said, "The hour has struck," the ears began to change. They grew longer, more pointed, and soon were covered with gray hair. And while everyone was wondering where they had seen ears like that before, Rabadash's face began to change too. It grew longer and thicker at the top, and larger-eyed, and the nose sank back into the face, or else the face swelled out to become all nose, and there was hair all over it. And his arms grew longer and came down in front of him till his hands were resting on the ground, only they weren't hands now, they were hooves, and he was standing on all fours, and his clothes disappeared, and everyone laughed louder and louder, because they couldn't help it, for now what had been Rabadash was simply and unmistakably a donkey. The terrible thing was that his human speech lasted just a moment longer than his human shape, so that when he realized the change that was coming over him, he screamed out, "No, not a donkey! Mercy! Even if it were a horse, or ee-haw, 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 ee-haw!" And so the words died away into a donkey's bray. "Now hear me, Rabadash," said Aslan. "Justice shall be mixed with mercy. You shall not always be an ass." At this, of course, the donkey twitched its ears forward, and that also was so funny that everybody laughed all the more. They tried not to, but they tried in vain. "You have appealed to Tash," said Aslan, "and in the temple of Tash you shall be healed. You must stand before the altar of Tash in Tashban at the great autumn fest this year, and there, in the light of all Tashban, your ass's shape will fall from you, and all men will know you for Prince Rabadash. But as long as you live, if you ever go more than 10 miles away from the great temple in Tashban, you shall instantly become again as you are now, and from that second change there will be no return." There was a short silence, and then they all stirred and looked at one another as if they were waking from a sleep. Aslan was gone, but there was a brightness in the air and on the grass, and a joy in their hearts which assured them that he had been no dream, and anyway, there was a donkey right in front of them. King Loon was the kindest-hearted of men, and on seeing his enemy in this regrettable condition, he forgot all of his anger. "Your Royal Highness," he said, "I am most truly sorry for the things that have come to the—" Oh, goodness, messed that one up. "I am most truly sorry that things have come to this extremity. Your Highness will bear witness that it was none of our doing, and of course we shall be delighted to provide your Highness with shipping back to Tashban for the, treatment that Aslan has prescribed. You shall have every comfort which your Highness's situation allows, the best of the cattle boats, the freshest carrots and thistles, but a deafening bray from the donkey as well as a well-aimed kick at one of the guards made it clear that these kindly offers were ungratefully received. And here, to get him out of the way, I'd better finish off the story of Rabadash. He, or it, was duly sent back by boat to Tashban and brought to the temple of Tash at the great autumn festival, and then he became a man again. But, of course, 4,000 or 5,000 people had seen this transformation, and the affair simply could not be hushed up. After the old Tisrock's death, when Rabadash became the Tisrock in his place, he turned out to be the most peaceful Tisrock Calormen had ever known. This was because, not daring to go more than 10 miles from Tashban, he could never go to war himself, and he didn't want his Tarkans to win fame in wars at his expense, for that was the way that Tisrocks got overthrown. But though his reasons were selfish, it made things much more comfortable for all the smaller countries around Calormen. His own people never forgot that he had been a donkey. During his reign, and to his face, he was called Rabadash the Peacemaker, but after his death and behind his back, he was called Rabadash the Ridiculous, and if you look him up in a good history of Calormen, try the local library, you will find him under that name. And to this day, in Calormen schools, if you do anything unusually stupid, you are likely to be called a second Rabadash. Meanwhile, at Anvard, everyone was very glad that he had been disposed of before the real fun had begun, which was a grand feast held in the evening on the lawn before the castle, with dozens of lanterns to help the moonlight. And the wine flowed, and tales were told, and jokes were cracked, and then silence was made, and the king's poet with 2 fiddlers stepped out into the middle of the circle. Aravis and Cor prepared themselves to be bored, for the only poetry they knew was the Calormen kind, and you know how that was like. But at the very first scrape of the fiddles a rocket seemed to go up in their head, and the poet sang of the great old lay of fair Olven, and how he fought the giant Pyre and turned him into stone, and that is the origin of Mount Pyre. It was a 2-headed giant, and won the Lady Liln for his bride, and when it was over they wished it was going to begin again. And though Bree couldn't sing, he told the story of the fight at Zulindre, and Lucy told again. They had all, except for Aravis and Cor, heard it many times, but they wanted it again, the tale of the wardrobe, and how she and King Edmund, Queen Susan, and Peter the High King had first come to Narnia. And presently, as was certain to happen sooner or later, King Loon said that it was time for the young people to go to bed, and tomorrow, Cor, he added, shalt come all over the castle with me and see the estate and mark all of its strengths and weaknesses, for it shall be thine to guard when I'm gone. But Corrin will be the king then, father, said Cor. Nay, lad, said King Loon, thou art my heir, the crown comes to thee. But I don't want it, said Cor. I'd far rather— 'Tis no question of what thou wantest, Cor, nor I either. 'Tis the course of the law. But if we're twins, we must be the same age. Nay, said the king with a laugh, one must come first. Art Corrin's elder by full 20 minutes, and his better too, let's hope, though that's no great mastery. He looked at Corrin with a twinkle in his eyes. But, father, couldn't you make whichever you like to be the next king? No, the king's under the law, for it's the law that makes him king. Hast no more power to start away from thy crown than any sentry from his post. Oh dear, said Cor. I don't want to at all, and Corrin, I'm most dreadfully sorry. I never dreamed my turning up was going to chisel you out of your kingdom." "Hooray!" said Corrin. "I don't have to be king! I shall always be prince, and princes have all the fun." "And that's truer than your brother knows, Cor," said King Loon, "for this is what it means to be king, to be first in every desperate attack and last in every desperate retreat, and when there's hunger in the land, as there must be now and then in bad years, to wear finer clothes and laugh louder over a smaller meal than any man in your land." When the two boys were going upstairs to bed, Cor again asked Corrin if nothing could be done about it, and Corrin said, "If you say another word about it, I'll knock you down." It would be nice to end the story by saying that after that the two brothers never disagreed about anything again, but I'm afraid it would not be true. In reality, they quarreled and fought about just as often as any other two boys would, and all their fights ended, if they didn't begin, with Cor getting knocked down, for though when they had both grown up and become swordsmen, Cor was the most dangerous man in battle, neither he nor anyone else in the north countries could ever equal Corrin as a boxer. That was how he got his name of Corrin Thunderfist, and how he performed his great exploit against the lapsed bear of the Stormness, which was really a talking bear, but had gone back to wild bear habits. Corrin climbed up to its lair on the Narnian side of the Stormness one winter day, when the snow was on the hills, and boxed it without a timekeeper for 33 rounds. At the end it couldn't see out of its eyes and became a reformed character. Aravis also had many quarrels, and I'm afraid even fights, with Cor, but they always made up again, so that years later, when they were grown up, they were so used to quarreling and making up again that they got married so that they could go on doing it more conveniently. And after King Loon's death, they made a good king and queen of Archenland, and Ram the Great, the most famous of all kings of Archenland, was their son. Bree and Hwin lived happily to a great age in Narnia, and both got married, but not to one another. And there weren't many months in which one or both of them didn't come trotting over the pass to visit their friends in Anvard. Next week, we start Prince Caspian. Now, Prince Caspian has been made into movies a couple of times, so it'll probably be a little more familiar than The Horse and His Boy, but I hope that you'll enjoy it anyway and enjoy kind of noticing some differences and similarities between the books and movies. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and as always, if you want to support the program, you can find me at patreon.com/shiveringmouse, and I'll look forward to seeing you later.